Yo, all right, Kane. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your very busy day to appear on the podcast.
Thank
It
you,
is
sir.
definitely an honor and a pleasure to have you here. So why don't you tell the people what you do, give them a little bit about you.
For sure. Well, first and foremost, I'm a businessman. I focus on media assets, media production technologies, acquisitions. I do a lot in investments in entertainment, finance and entertainment, particularly films, television. We're forging into games with major producers and
Oh, wow.
especially in the virtual reality. We have major gaming partners, major studio partners, and I was able to actually form a fund recently with a lot of private equity investors that let me acquire a lot of major conglomerate assets. And so I'm partnered with major studios now, and I'm acquiring a major studios library now. And then we'll move on to banking and start having a minority impact in banking and fintech. So I'm trying to make an impact on the business class in America coming from our community. So that's my background.
That's incredible. And what was it that made that seem like that was going to be your career path? What about business intrigues you to that degree?
I think it was I had political ambitions first, right?
Really?
Yeah, it was kind of strange. I had almost a Ronald Reagan-like strategy. I would go in entertainment, come to California, go in entertainment, and then propel myself into politics. But when I got in entertainment, I thought I would be in front of the camera. But fortunately for me, when I was 21 years old. I had the dream of coming to Hollywood, and I only had $217 in my pocket, and I took a plane ticket and didn't come back. But I was fortunate enough to be to secure a job at Paramount Pictures, and I was mentored by that studio group president at the age of 21. So
Oh my
that
goodness.
dropped my ambition to be in front of the camera because I was being educated on what entertainment business actually was by a studio group president who ended up having a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. So that's what the operation side of entertainment kind of pointed me to how good I would be in business. I got it early on at the age of 21. And so I've been able to apply that ever since.
That's incredible. So I gotta ask, especially with that kind of background, it just, with the stigmas the way they are, it doesn't sound like marijuana will be something you partake in. It doesn't sound like it. I'm just keeping it real. When we look at pot in the grand scope, the stigma is that low lives are doing it, people that are uneducated are doing it, people that don't have any ambition or value themselves are doing it. And one of the things that I love about having these discussions is that we disprove it almost every week, every episode, every person I've had on, and just listening to your story, it's admirable. It's not something that is the common norm for normal people, right? For the regular day-to-day person, they're not willing to take that plunge, especially into entrepreneurship, and really, have to do it yourself, not have a boss, and you know what I mean. That's a big deal, and it's just I love seeing that kind of Black excellence. Me personally, so. It's amazing to know that on top of all that, you partake.
Well, I think it was interwoven in my life. The Black excellence it was part of our genes. So I had a great uncle who ended up being a kingpin, a literal Frank Lucas level kingpin.
Oh my goodness!
Millions of dollars in this. So the family I grew up in. They were intelligent in how they utilized that money. They created companies, construction companies, real estate companies, owned houses and businesses. And so that's the environment I grew up in. And the second generation, of course, squandered all that. But in the beginning, that's what I grew up in. So I grew up in this Frank Lucas sort of household, an American gangster sort of household. But the fact that these men were able to, and women, were able to break through in the community and gain so much money and gain so much respect, showed me that they were actually businessmen and women, and they had only defaulted to an industry that was available to them, right? But if they approached any other industry, if they had the opportunity, they would have dominated there too. And that became particularly apparent with my grandmother. But I really didn't partake. I saw it around me every day growing up. My father smoked it, my uncle smoked it. My aunt smoked it. My grandmother would even joke about it, right? She was a gangster, right? So, but she didn't partake herself. She was pretty old school. But I didn't really start until like high school. My friends were all enamored with it, but I grew up with it, so it wasn't really appealing to me. But I guess around college time, when the stress level had
reached its peak.
I started to partake, and it actually helped me study. And it was a wrap because I got smarter smoking weed.
Get the fuck out of here. So yeah. I'll keep it real. You know, I went to college for a year, and I just wasn't interested. Yeah. I had a professor, and maybe this is my fault. And I take full responsibility if it is, right? You know, I'm not one of these people that looks at something that I did in the past and can't realize where I could have made a different decision to impact me in a better way. I got offended at how full of themselves this professor was, you know? She just talked down to, professor. Yeah, and you're in community college, you know, and you're talking down to students in just such a condescending way, you know. It just made me feel as though like maybe this isn't the place for me, because I dealt with that in certain aspects in high school too. You know, teachers that come from being professors in colleges. I had a couple of them. My freshman year, I went to a school in Oceanside and kind of encountered that same kind of vibe from a couple of the teachers there. Mm-hmm. Didn't really get it in LA in any of the schools, but then when I moved to Vegas for a year for my junior year, kind of got it there. You know, it's just different places, you experience different things. But I say that to say this is that I just felt like I was one of those people where the whole stigma of college isn't for everyone. Just I felt like it applied to me there. So you know, I ended up working. I should have probably stayed in school though, because I had amassed a little bit of school debt somehow. And just going for a year.
Part of the game.
Yeah, exactly.
The thing is I agree with you there. I don't have a college degree, and I do what I do. Every time I enter to a meeting and I dominate that meeting with some of these Wall Street folks or Silicon Valley or Hollywood folks, they'll call one of my right hands and be like, where did he get his master's degree? Well, I don't have one. I just studied my ass off. Well, like you, I took 1 year of college, but I never stopped taking college courses, however. I was online, I stayed continuing auditing courses. I even read books by Ivy League professors, and then I ended up auditing their courses online. They ended up being references for me, and that's how I got here. I took a real unorthodox path. Well, I have Ivy League credentials without an Ivy League degree, just because I read some books and I contacted the author, right?
That's insane.
But what you have in you and what I have in me is what is in all of us. The university system or the college system is only designed for the worker's mind. You don't have a worker's mind, right? And this is why you've always been at odds with the jobs that you have and how to make money, right? Now you're awakening to your own potential, but that's a growth,
right?
You know, so you know, colleges themselves came from the Renaissance era, where you had the bankers, the Medici family, who owned factories. They wanted to train their workers in their factories through colleges, right? The guilds were dying down. You want to make sure you stay the top banking family in Europe, so you want to train your workers, right? Universities, however, are pretty much older. The first universities in, I think, Bologna in Italy in like 1213 or something like that.
Oh, wow.
But it was made to investigate the truth of God.
Wow. Now, so college wasn't even necessarily initially created for higher learning. It was to investigate.
Educate the public to be a labor force.
Wow.
Right? That's the purpose of colleges, and that's the purpose of public schools. So you hear it in the words. We never ask ourselves, what is the word career?
Yeah.
Right?
I've never asked that.
The etymology of that word is, what is your life choice? Right?
Oh, wow.
So if you'd have grew up in 1910, 1920 and had a normal American education, your career would have been, what is my choice for life? Not what's my specialization, what's my job? Right? Now colleges aim towards that. But then you had a whole career, and you're plotting your career in college, right? Instead of focusing a specialization. And I think, you know, we've lost that. right?
Oh.
So you're qualitatively different than a laborer. And the education system wasn't designed for you. You would probably design a university, right?
Right.
We don't recognize that though.
That's unfortunate. And that whole aspect of the initialization of certain establishments like universities and the patriarchy that comes along with it, how many people are able to get in, what kind of class of people they want to see on their campuses, things of that. It just I don't think you're right. I never asked the question, where did all that come from? Why does it have to be this way? Why are a lot of Ivy League schools predominantly white? Why are there so many instances where in order for Black people to reach that pinnacle, we have to go to Black-owned colleges? You know what I mean? We have to go to places like Howard and Brown in order to really see a difference in how education is presented to us. I just know so many people that have gone to college and have told me the same thing that you're telling me now. Is like, I don't know that I needed to go to 4 years worth of school just to get this piece of paper.
No. Unless you need to acquire a job. It's if you need a gatekeeper to tell you where you're going in your career, then you need those papers to say, I've done this.
Yeah.
And I paid for this.
Yeah.
I grind it through it.
Right.
So if you give me this job, I'll grind through it. That's all it signifies. It doesn't signify.
I think that works. I think that works if you're trying to be, an accountant, a lawyer, a doctor. Yeah, things of that. Yeah. But if you're not 100% certain what you're going to come out of school doing, like you have so many people that end up getting those what they call wasted degrees. Like, oh, I got a degree in liberal arts, or I got a degree in arts and just art. Or something like that. I mean, hey, shout out to all my artists. I got no beef with y'all. I'm just saying, when people are hiring people in certain job situations, they're not looking for arts.
No.
They're
they
looking
just want to see you completed a degree program. Yeah.
True. Or better yet, they want someone from STEM, science, technology, education, math. They want someone with one of those degrees because, obviously they understand things and can, dissect through certain problems a lot better than most. Like I would know what I do if I had to go through some of the mathematical courses you go through to get into a mathematics program. Like it's like nah, I don't have that capacity. So good on the people that do, because we need people in those fields. Those are the fields.
There's a mismatch though. These institutions that we rely on for education are supposed to turn out a labor force that can meet the American economy's needs. And when technology and globalization shifts those needs, you have whole systems in that infrastructure that can't change. They're budgeted for shit. They're budgeted to create structural engineers when they need to create electrical engineers. They need programs like that. It takes the university system almost 10 years to adjust what's needed immediately. Right?
Yeah.
And so I found my best education was not from textbooks, unless I could reach out to the author who created the theory.
Right.
My best education was from publications, educational publications like JSTOR and PNAS and all these scientific papers that were recently published, because the textbooks don't catch up to the scientific papers for 3 years, and then those textbooks don't get approved for 5 years. So you might have a scientist who's creating a theory. Elon Musk will pick it up, but that engineering student won't get it, and he won't be hired by SpaceX because he didn't read the paper that Elon Musk picked up. You know what I'm saying? So this is what I figured out. And it gives me a strong competitive advantage to any Ivy League graduate who hasn't created the theory or gone to the theory itself, right? So that in the internet age, without the internet, I couldn't do this at all.
Right, exactly.
So it's a liberating factor.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is beneficial to the cannabis industry too, because what you said earlier about how the university system works, where there's an exclusion factor to it.
Yeah, right? Exclusivity.
This happens when you start to normalize the weed industry, right? You choose who the winners are, and most of those are organized who has the resources, the legal resources, the financial resources, the economic resources to make a case to the government, to appeal to the government, right? And being historically disenfranchised with a lower level of wealth than any other community in the United States. Black families have the least amount of wealth than any other ethnic group in the United States, I think, outside of Native Americans, right? And we know how minuscule those numbers are.
Yeah.
But if you're looking at creating a business, let's say marijuana laws have suddenly been legalized, and you've been dealing for years, and you have maybe an infrastructure to take it on. But if you don't organize yourself in a legal way, the government won't recognize you.
Exactly.
And when a new industry is forming, let's say in California now, all of a sudden I started to hear about the Department of Cannabis Control. And I had no clue. Yes. This is the department that regulates all cannabis activity in the state of California.
Hold on. Let me make sure I understand this. They gave them their own department?
Department of Cannabis Control.
Can I tell you how they do it here in Washington?
What's this?
They lumped it together with alcohol.
Food and Drug Administration level shit, right? FDA kind of shit.
It's not smart. The way that they govern alcohol is the way that they govern cannabis here. That's why you can't have like an open container. You can't have cannabis sold in the way that we sell it in LA, where you can get it picked from a jar and choose your nugs, touch it, smell it, the whole nine. None of that. And we have the highest tax for cannabis in the country at 35%. In LA, it's 15%. In Denver, I think it's like close to 15. Maybe it's a little bit more. We're at 35. And we were the first state to legalize cannabis fully. So you got to think like, we're kind of like the blueprint for a lot of other states, but other states are doing it, in my opinion, better. You go to Oregon, the weed industry is nothing like this. You can smell, they show you the nugs, the whole nine. It's like, you come up here, the regulation is real. It's real. And that's what I wanted to pick your brain about, is how these regulations can affect the producers and the growers in the industry. Because when you legalize things fully, it comes with a lot of caveats. Like, yes, it's good for the consumer. The consumer has a lot less stress to worry about, a lot less to deal with in terms of legalities when purchasing their cannabis, going from A to B with it. But how does that affect people that are in the actual industry? How does it affect the guy that was growing, 60 plants and everything was great, and then they legalized it, and now he can only grow 24 because of the way things are worked out?
That's right. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Those individuals will suffer at the formation of any new industry. It doesn't matter if it's marijuana or not. They're the first entrants, right? The first entrants always make the first mistake. They are the friendsters to their Facebook. You know what I mean?
Oh my God, Friendster. I haven't heard that shit in fucking 15 years at least. Oh my God.
But that's how industries work. You have the first movers, and then once they establish that there could be an industry, they're not the industry themselves. You have early adopters. These early adopters come in. You hear it in the tech space a lot. These words. Early adopters come in. They got a little money to buy the shit, and they got a little money to fight legally too. So if a government decides, this is how it all gets legalized in California, from my perspective, that the war on drugs is costly.
Yeah,
right.
It is.
The marijuana industry is fiscally beneficial. So if we stop certain prosecutions, but instead legalize this industry, we could still criminalize the African Americans, Latinos, and immigrants, right? By formalizing how they enter this industry with high barriers to entry.
Yeah.
We call it formalization, legalization, normalization, whatever. But if that gentleman who has 60 plants does not belong to a civil body organization that can represent him to the government, he has no voice. And especially if he's not making campaign contributions, right?
Yeah, exactly. like all the tobacco.
Like tobacco. So that actually has to happen. You have to be patient 9-10 years for that to work its way through the system.
Oh my God.
But the problem is that once a government decides to do that, and it selects officials to administrate that through the Department of Cannabis Control. Well, they have directors who are regional directors who actually have the authority to issue these licenses. And so the government official or let's say the governor, Jerry Brown, is going to be able to choose who those directors are, or the State Assembly of California likely chose those. They're not going to look like us. They're not going to come from our communities, right? So we won't be represented there either. You might have a black politician, a Latino politician who might have a voice, but he doesn't have the political power to shift the voting body within that assembly. Right?
The one is always going to be drowned out by the majority. It's just the way it's always been.
Unfortunately, but there's a way to beat that, which a lot of minority groups, African Americans used to get it, but we forgot it, and that is to create civil society organizations that buffer between the people and the government. Okay. Let's say there was the Organization of African American Growers of Southern California, and they lobby Sacramento. Right? Okay. Instead of that individual farmer who has no voice, right?
I see what you're saying.
Maybe a major organization that may have a tax base and they can lobby and make campaign contributions. All those farmers could come together and piece together their money and make advertisements.
Right.
Lobbying for propositions.
Just like tobacco.
You have to do that.
And that's the way you normalize it. You move in the same manner as which, basically you dress for the job that you want, not the job you have, essentially.
Yeah. It doesn't mean you have to lose your identity. It just means you have to play the game in a capitalist fashion.
Right.
You know what I mean? And there's the exclusionary portion of it is, they don't want to talk about it, but they'll hide it in certain languages. You don't want minorities to dominate the early entrants or the early adopters of an industry, because cannabis is something that can be exported and imported, right? It then becomes, especially the U.S. government and Canada have some initiatives now that may be cross-border. So they want to make sure it's an Anglo-Saxon industry just like other industries, unfortunately, right?
Yeah, like alcohol or tobacco, yeah.
Yeah, and if you are unaware of those laws, it's easier for us to criminalize you and marginalize you outside the economy. This is what people should very thoroughly understand about economics and politics. They're not separate. Democracy was born in Athens, but it was born in the marketplace of Athens, the agora, that's right? So the businessmen of Athens, the farmers of Athens who own land, will come and hash out their arguments in the agora, right? And that's where democracy was born. That's no different today. That's why Jeff Bezos owns the Washington Post, right? So he can have a political voice.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Bezos owns the Post?
Yes, sir. Yes. That's why they smash Trump so often. It's a political voice, right?
Oh my God. Why do we give these motherfuckers so much money? Oh
I don't, God. Man. That's America, bro. That's how they do it.
Holy shit. Amazon is the. Remember when Amazon was cool? They have become right. They are a conglomerate now. Like,
yeah.
I mean, way worse than like, dude. Straight up, like if Skynet and Walmart had a baby.
Yeah, bro.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
But okay, so that's why you want. So the darling of California is Silicon Valley, right? And Silicon Valley is the most recent industry that is formed in California. So the legislators would have a recency bias on who is the best group of people to form an industry. But once I saw marijuana legalization happen, I saw all these billionaires from Silicon Valley rush their money into Sacramento and carve up the space, right? Unfortunately, that is also an Anglo-Saxon dominated industry, right? Silicon Valley, if you're a venture capitalist and I'm a black entrepreneur, they might give like 0.4% of annual venture capital dollars to a black American. That's why we can't innovate and create new businesses, right? So if Silicon Valley now is the dominant player in marijuana, they're not going to fund minority businesses, right? It's almost like a setup. let me let you figure this out. I'll lock you up for it. I'll legalize it, then I'll give it to them.
Jesus. That's
right. But drug use
insane.
And immigration, and not just immigration, but the treating of someone as a second-class citizen or a foreigner, let's say like African Americans. So it started with not prohibition, but with something called the temperance movement. Do you remember hearing about the temperance movement?
No.
It came like right before the Civil War when a bunch of Scottish and Irish immigrants came over to the United States. And with them came things like whiskey and, bourbon and all those things. Americans were before then drinking, not whiskey. Whiskey was older. Scotch.
Oh, Scotch. Oh, okay.
Scotch,
Okay.
stuff like that.
Gotcha.
It changed America, who was just drinking beer and whiskey, to the point where women were quite upset that they were being abused by husbands who were spending all their money at the bar and drinking. Think of the Wild West before the Wild West.
Right.
The temperance movement kind of bled into the abolitionist movement, right?
Okay.
It's around the same time the women who were part of that temperance movement ended up turning their energy into abolition. One of the things that was happening concurrently on the back end of abolition was the Chinese immigration in California, right?
Okay.
1859 becomes a big push. What is it, 49? The 49ers, the gold rush brought a lot of Chinese immigrants, right? So the Chinese immigrants are coming from California. In 1859, you have the opium issue that they attached to the Chinese, right? The Chinese ended up dominating some of the mining space in California. They get outlawed based on bringing drugs into California and outcompeting whites, right? Similarly, blacks were labeled with in abolition as being the, what do you call it? The providers of things like moonshine and whiskey, the things that were being outlawed by the temperance movement on one side. When the woman allied with the abolitionists, now it's a black problem, the drinking. Later on, the 1920s, the problem became cocaine for blacks, and then marijuana became the problem for Mexican immigrants, right? The Truman administration, the Roosevelt administration. If you can attach a taboo to a foreign population, Anglo-Saxons can then legally attack you. And immigration, especially because most of those Mexican immigrants being removed are 60% of them are for marijuana violations. 60%.
That's
minor
insane.
Marijuana violations, just possession.
Yeah.
So that's the tool of criminalizing marijuana on one end and legitimizing an industry on the other. It is almost a protectionist, a white protectionist sort of thing, right? All industry is created by a minority, legitimized by the majority. All industry. Agriculture in the United States is created by African Americans, the best farmers on the planet.
Wow. That's insane.
Yeah. So the laws are who gets there first.
Basically, yeah. It's like the gold rush.
It's like the gold rush. There's I think it is Friedrich Hayek, the philosopher, says there's a monopoly on violence. That's where government comes from. The one who wins the fucking war and establishes order is the government, right? Right. Now, we're born in a time when we didn't have a say in that war, right? True. And now all of a sudden we're coming up, we're waking up, we're competent, and we're like, wait a minute, why don't I have a say in these laws? And so we got a lot of catching up to do as African Americans, Latinos. I'm afraid Asian populations kind of get it in California. They organize in groups because they come in here in an organized group, right? A church may sponsor certain Asian immigrants, let's say the Korean church. They'll sponsor a potential family or individual to come to California or United States, and all the members of the church will package their money over and send this person over, right? Wow. So when they get here, they have that organization over there, and then there's an organization over here to receive them, Chinese immigrants too, Vietnamese immigrants too. So they have civil society organizations that lobby on their behalf. That's why you have a lot of Vietnamese in the marijuana industry. And there are a lot
I didn't even realize that.
Yeah. So how they organize is different. Whereas we've been broken apart, post-civil rights, it's hard for us to reorganize again. That was deliberate, kill our leaders and criminalize us. That's hard to organize then, right? Right. And Latinos, the immigration issue, you just attach the drug and issue to the immigration issue, you can criminalize it. It becomes crimmigration, right? And then you have all the marijuana to yourself. Now, what makes it legal, because marijuana was taboo to America for a long time. What made it popular was, I think, the 1980s Wall Street culture. The Gordon Geckos of the world and the cocaine and all that made a lot of drugs more acceptable to the American middle class. Yeah. You know, and then a minority movement in the 90s with shit like the Chronic and Dr. Dre and the rappers and all that. Their kids picked it up and it became, now we're adults. Right. Now it's normal for them. Right. Now you start to see, as they are now adults, middle-class whites who had it embedded in their culture, minority infused, mind you, and begun,
Right.
can now legislate for their own benefit.
Damn.
Right? It's almost like a demographic shift. And they're like, oh, we smoke weed, it's cool now.
Oh my God. It's incredible.
To counter that, you need to organize like it's a civil rights movement. Because it is a civil rights movement. A new industry is forming. You criminalize me from it. I still have these penalties that you haven't expunged my records.
Right.
So now I need some sort of reparations action from the government, right?
Oh God. You know that shit. I mean, trust me when I tell you that is an entire podcast just talking about reparations.
Yeah, let's do that one day.
Oh man, we got it.
Yeah,
so I gotta ask you, because it's going on right now, and I've been paying a little bit of attention to it. I got a buddy that's actually watching it like every single day, this Kyle Rittenhouse trial, and how he went on the stand and was giving his testimony, and I guess he had like a breakdown. Started getting uncontrollably emotional, and kind of looked at the judge to bail him out. You know, like, man, you know. So they took him off the stand. I guess they took a break, and I can't help but like look at the situation and have that thought in my head, like, would we even be going this far if he was a person of color? Like, is that something that we'd be taking the time to do to give him his just day in court? Or would we already have buried him underneath the prison? You know, like, I'm not certain if anyone can see that distinct factor and difference. Especially when you have so many implications of that actual evidence, when, you know, people like Ahmaud Arbery don't even make it to court, you know? So it just trips me out, you know, just seeing just how different this case is being viewed upon, and how there's like this odd group of people that think that this guy's a hero, or you know, for killing people.
He is to them.
You know,
and the thing is there's a what I want people to understand is we forget the word custom, right? Custom is a set of behaviors that a community establishes amongst themselves as normal, right? Customs. Well, each community or each ethnic group has its own customs.
Right.
Anglo-Saxons have their customs. Native Americans have their customs. Blah blah blah. Like I said, the monopoly on violence, the winner establishes the custom. We are visitors in an Anglo-Saxon community still. I don't care if you call yourself a citizen or not. You were made a citizen by Anglo-Saxons in an Anglo-Saxon community. That's America, right? It doesn't matter if you were here too. Like, my family was here since before the founding of the United States, since 1789, right? Before the U.S. Constitution, my black family was here, right? So was yours probably, right? Because most of the slaves came here around 1730s and 1750s. But my point is that there's a custom be established on television right now amongst Anglo-Saxon media. One of their beloved children, who made himself a vigilante, fighting off dangerous rioters, not protesters, rioters, dangerous rioters, and they applaud him for being courageous, because they also fear that demographic shift, right? And so even if they view him as doing something wrong, they love what this judge is doing by not labeling the dead as victims, labeling the dead as perhaps instigators, right? Then you can establish a defense for this young white male. The crime is this. The crime is he traveled over state lines with a weapon and was not authorized within his state of arrival for any security purposes whatsoever by state officials. That's a crime, right? You have to be deputized by a sheriff to be able to even probably execute a citizen's arrest. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But here's the thing. The deputization by the sheriff is something called, it's a law. It's a Roman law. Roman law comes through English law, which comes through to today, American law. There's a long history of law. So what made a sheriff be able to round up a posse and go catch him a Negro and hang him was a Roman law. I got to go catch me some criminals who may have stolen from the army.
Right.
Go take 10 soldiers and bring them. Go deputize 10 soldiers and bring them back.
Right.
It's called posse comitatus. It's a Roman law. Posse comitatus is in the laws of America today, and it was what sheriffs were using in the South United States during the Jim Crow to gather a posse and go get this black criminal.
Wow.
So he was the custom. The Anglo-Saxon custom was now law, right? So this is what's happening in front of your eyes. That judge is trying to accept that custom as law, that young man can come from this state to this to go attack rioters, right? That judge is very dangerous. He knows he's on TV. He knows he's setting a precedent. He knows it, right? His legal presumption is wrong.
Yeah.
Because that young man had no right to be there. Even the car company said they didn't even know this dude. They didn't ask him, right?
Wow.
And so the fact that you shot 1, 2, and 3 is not motive. 1 is enough. That might be an accident, but 2 and 3, you keep going. You're not in remorse off of the first shot.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
What it is an invitation in the event of another January 6th riot to do what you want. And he's very aware of this recent Supreme Court ruling that doesn't allow you to sue the federal government at the federal government level for police brutality. You're fucked.
What?
You cannot take to the U.S. Supreme Court matters of police brutality. Your state matters now, only.
Wow.
Right? This is Kamala Harris, right? This is Joe Biden. They rose to office on the back of police brutality. We'll do police reform. None of that. Law and order is what it is. And law and order is established by Anglo-Saxon custom. Once we're aware of that, this is why I say we have to organize as a group.
Right.
Push the custom in California, because that's the only way up, organically and unified and aggressively competitive, or they'll kill you. Tulsa, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what's happening in front of you, and that's why you're like, no, there is a real what do you call it? The double standard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's so much disconnect where people really think that it doesn't exist, and that you know, we're crying wolf by suggesting that there is very unfair treatment of people in color when it comes to our judicial system.
Yeah.
I think it's just wild. Something that I saw within the trial, and it's one of the worst arguments the prosecution offered, and I'm really sad that they offered this. They asked him, "Isn't it true that you play Call of?" Oh wait.
Sorry about that.
No, you're good. You're good.
Yeah.
They asked him, "Isn't it true you play Call of Duty?" And he's like, "Yeah." "Isn't it true that that's a game where you just hunt down and shoot people?" I'm serious as a heart attack. The prosecution. This is the I was heartbroken at this attempt to correlate real life violence with video games.
And there's no correlation.
There's none. It's a false equivalency, but like, they went for it wholeheartedly. And I think it backfired really bad. And it's funny because
the state of Wisconsin, is this Wisconsin? Where is he?
I thought he was in Wisconsin, and did he drive to? I can't remember. Now it's good you asked that, because I actually don't remember. I think so.
Yeah, it's Wisconsin. These people are this is retarded. Wisconsin's really tripping me out right now.
They sincerely used the video game violence logic in this case, and that was one of their tactics. Another thing that kind of upset me.
Not racial motivation.
I mean, yeah. But I mean, I think that was one of the arguments, but this was just kind of like an argument that I heard and was just blown away by. And it's funny because it's not the first time I saw it this week. Earlier this week, I watched David Pakman when I want to like get kind of unbiased left-wing news, because he'll shit on Biden when necessary, because Biden's his whole logic for everything overseas right now is bad. All of his foreign affair policies are just not looking good. And Pac-Man roasts him whenever that's going on and he sees it. But he got banned on Twitch. He was following the Rittenhouse trial, and while he was following it, I think he was watching it on Court TV. A friend of mine told me that Court TV shows unedited trial footage live, right? So whenever they show like a picture that has really graphic images, it's there. And he watched that live on Twitch. So when they showed Gage's arm and how it was basically blown off. I mean, you could see like the bone and bicep muscle tissue, and it was terrible. They banned him for that. And rightfully so, right? Like, you hey man, you got caught. You should have been watching it on MSNBC or ABC or CNN. Like, you could have watched it on any of the other telecasts where they edit that, right? And his take on Twitter was, they banned me for a picture of a graphic image, but they allow video game violence and sexual content to pour in onto the platform. I'm like, wow, this is really a take?
It's a bubble. What you have are silos. People are fed information. It's worsened. So this is a concept that I encountered in some philosophy studies. It's probably like the 1910s, 1890s, around there. I don't remember this philosopher's name, but he created something that people form silos. There's bubbles of belief, and those bubbles are very rarely broken. And especially in corporations, let's say departments don't talk to each other. You hear people say that a lot. That's a silo. Right. One department has just got their own little culture.
Right. I got you.
Even though in the same this is what's happening now. But I honestly believe the algorithms of social media have accelerated that beyond control.
Oh yeah.
And so people are really fed only information that confirms their beliefs.
It's echo chamber. It's an echo chamber.
It's an echo chamber.
Yeah.
And they desperately need some interpersonal communication with outside groups. But I don't see that happening. The disparity is not the disparity, the galvanization is extreme today, to the point where if you look at a map of the Republican and Democratic views of the United States, they are as far apart as they were in the 1850s before the Civil War.
Wow.
That means something's going to happen. Something's going to break, right? I don't know about a Civil war. That's not what I'm saying.
No, of course not.
Yeah. Something politically has to break in order for it to be fixed. And so if we are pulling apart like that, that only allows a demagogue like a Donald Trump to come in and fill in the gaps.
Well, honestly, we can say what we want about Gen Z. In the next 20 or 30 years, all these kids are going to be in government.
Yeah, that's true.
All these kids that believe in, inclusion, and, even the ones that believe in cancel culture in more ways than one. I mean, obviously, cancel culture does have a sensibility that's in the right place, right? In my opinion, it's messed up in instances when people are getting canceled for shit that they said a decade ago. Because within a decade, I'm just gonna keep it real. Within a decade, you could have changed your entire scope. People are able to change, and I hate that concept of no one changes. I mean, maybe no one that changes, but the world is a lot bigger than we like to think. I know that we all kind of like to say, oh, it's a small world when we run into a friend that we haven't seen in years. But the world is fucking huge, okay? Yeah. And there are a lot of people that you'll never meet that have beliefs that you'll never believe in. And that's just the way it is, right?
That's the way it is.
So it's just, it's a weird dynamic to me, how we're seeing right now that we kind of bag on these kids, but these are going to be the kids that are going to be running the world in the next 3-4 decades. And maybe that's for the best. Maybe that's for the best. Maybe that's for the best. Maybe that's how you push out that old guard that has that idea, like you're talking about, of just exclusion and exclusivity. and only thinking about one particular race that they want to see function in the wholeality of what they see as a real society. And
I'm encouraged by that.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, I may shit on these kids now because they don't know how to use a can opener, but if they're going to be the ones if they're going to be the ones ruling the country and the world and opening up opportunity for all cultures because they believed in inclusion and they grew up seeing social injustice in a real way because they grew up in the media era. They grew up with a phone in their hand, being able to see things that maybe changes the landscape of how they approach things. Like, you know what? I'm white, and I don't like seeing this happen to people of color. As opposed to the
establishment, now, there's a problem, and so there's actually threefold. One is that population of youth, Gen Z, who has the more open worldview, is particularly urban and coastal, right? And we know it online. I don't know if when you play games how much some Western dude my God, you're like, where you come from? And I'm like, wait a minute, it's 2021. Why am I the N-word on Call of Duty?
I know. Oh my God, my girl was just telling me about some shit she heard in the lobby. These people losing their minds saying it after a game, and I'm like, man, it. And then when you see that on TikTok a lot. People will post, because a lot of people record for content. You never know who's recording. That's why you should really watch your mouth, because we are in the day and age of people recording everything. Like when I play games on COD with randoms, I've gotten to the habit of recording the gameplay sometimes. Just not, I might have a burner of a game where I do really well, but also like if they say some really outlandish shit, I want to have it recorded. Because number one, it's awful, and I like having the proof in order if I want to do something about it. But two, it's free content, because this is, and that's something people need to see and hear. It's free content. Like, hey man, this is how people really are. They lose their mind when they know that they can have that anonymity behind their microphone.
Yes.
There's a level of just absurdity.
So that's the Rittenhouse trial to me, is that, no, really, it's not the anonymity, it is that they now would have permission to be a Proud Boy, an Oath Keeper, and attack anybody, right? They can go anywhere across state lines and attack anybody who's protesting. That is anti-democratic.
Yeah.
The United States was born out of a mob, right? Boston Tea Party and all that, they were protesting. Right? Now all of a sudden a certain group doesn't have the right to protest, then democracy can't function now. That's absolutism.
Exactly.
So they're trying to make it absolute that the Anglo-Saxon way is here to stay. It doesn't matter the demographic shift.
Which is a double standard, right? Which is a double standard, because what did we just see on January 6th? Was that not a protest? Was that not a riot? Was that not a mob? You know what I mean? So it's just so.
That is really, to me, sedition. And it needs to be labeled as such. That's an attack on the U.S. government to delegitimize it. That's sedition. Right? They couldn't even stand by the democratic process and the peaceful transition of power. Right? That is a prosecution that needs to happen. And they let these guys in jail go on vacation. And
60 days. They put them on a TV show. Hey, we're gonna let you do 60 days in, and you'll get out. Yeah. A lot of them got 60-day it's 60 days in jail.
That's and very dangerous, and it's not on us, because Black people have always held democracy true. I call us the touchstones of democracy, from civil rights to, in fact, you don't have the term federal citizen until the freedom of blacks. You were a citizen of California, you were a citizen of Virginia, until you have 4 million people who are all of a sudden must be freed and find a home, and they're going from state to state. Now you have a federal citizen that courts have to recognize.
Right.
This is what happens in the 13th Amendment, right? But not only that, we created out of that, the first public schools in America were from the blacks in Reconstruction. They couldn't go to white schools. The public school system, some of it came from Germany in the 1880s, but most of it came from the Southern black women creating schools during Reconstruction. That gave the birth to the Ku Klux Klan.
Oh, wow.
They attacked schools and school children first, right? Because you're an economic competitor. Not only do you have, fresh out of slavery, you got these farms and these businesses, and you got schools. Well, let's prevent the next generation. Terrorize them. Kill them too, right? So that's part of the part of that negative legalization effect of the normalization of the industry in California, right? Is that while we still get criminalized, they have a chance again to take off and build wealth.
Right.
But another negative to me is the limited view we have of an industry, not recognizing that an industry is not just its core product, but all the peripherals around it. Right. I would encourage a black fintech person to create the bank that accepts marijuana deposits.
Yes.
It's going to be legal soon.
Right. Yeah.
And then you can dominate the industry by taking on all those. You can acquire one of those marijuana growers by that time.
Right.
You can create a marketing company who can essentially market the product across state lines, domestically, internationally, once it becomes federally recognized, so forth, right? You can get in the marijuana industry in different angles instead of the core product itself and still dominate the industry, right? I don't think so some of the legalization is negatives is that we're focusing just on opening up distribution and
commerce. We're focusing on commerce. Yeah.
But not the peripherals that, analytics, finance.
Exactly. Function.
There's a lot we could do.
I worked for a grower when I first moved up here. That's the reason I moved up here, is to work in the cannabis industry and kind of like a foot in the door, I unfortunately worked for a producer that did not have their shit together, and I saw all the negatives that come with working for that type of producers. Not following certain bylaws, not following certain code, just a wealth of different problems that I saw. And that's all right, because I learned how not to do a lot of things. And I think that's almost as important as learning how to do new things. You know what I mean? So I say that to say this. The industry is kind of fractured right now because there's no consistency from state to state. Everything's different from every state because of the federal illegalization. And I think that if there was just universal legalization, it could help in a lot more areas than it would be negative, I think. That's my approach from it, because when you look at how it affects people from not being able, like you just said, to even be able to deposit their money, that leaves you susceptible to robbery. You can't insure that money because of where it comes from, and
Well, there's something to that. If I can delegitimize you, you don't have the right. You don't have any social legitimacy. Therefore, you can't legislate, right? And so that it's all a circle. If I can criminalize you, you won't have the social dignity, the social respect to even propose any sort of ruling law or ruling order, right? And so, like I said, that the economy and the politics are linked. It's not a racial thing. It's really an Anglo-Saxon method of dealing with foreigners. It's just how they've been doing for 1,100 years, right? And it's they will deal with foreigners as long as you make them money.
Yeah.
But you can't make more money than them. They will invite you in their society if you make them money, right? That's not necessarily racist. It's just a strong in-group bias. Right? Our point is to get competitive. Competitive now, right? And really, so some of the federal law actually bubbles up organically from the states like that.
Right.
The Supreme Court will hear cases that they see bubbling up in several different states, right? That's how the civil rights movement happened. I'm Thurgood Marshall. I'm gonna attack everything I can in Georgia. Right. I'm gonna go to the Georgia Supreme Court, and then I got, Ralph Abernathy or someone else, or Julian, NAACP over here in South Carolina, working on the same law, right? It'll bubble up into appeals. It'll bubble up into the Supreme Court, and it must go to the federal Supreme Court. Right. So this is what's happening in the United States right now. And you have 30%. I think 36% of it is in California, Oregon, Washington, and Colorado, the marijuana industry. California is the 6th largest economy in the world, right? All those electoral votes is what's shifting America attention to marijuana. California is so influential, it doesn't understand. It changes language, it changes tech, it changes media, right? And it changes immigration policy. Immigration policy is not determined by Texas, it's determined by California, right?
Wow.
So the federal government takes a lot of its notice from what California does. It doesn't like the liberal tint of the major cities of Los Angeles and San Francisco.
Of course not.
California is not that. It's not.
Yeah.
We know it's not that.
Yeah,
right?
it's not. No.
You got your Nixons coming out of here and your Reagans coming out of here.
Exactly.
But,
yeah.
but
Your Arnolds.
Your Arnolds. So, but there are some negatives. I think our attention is not on other peripherals of the industry, and we really need to. We could actually control the industry from there, especially from the finance side of things. You know,
if we get a foothold in even one of the major peripherals, rather it be like you said, when I was working for the producer, they didn't have a competent system to house all the data for all the different plants and all the different concentrates. Like all of them just seemed really convoluted and not consistent. If somebody can develop an app, an API that would be universally used by all producers in order to control data, kind of like how for customer service workers, you usually get them a service like Zendesk so that they can manage and house all of their tickets that come in. Something like that is just universally known. That changes the whole game.
Yeah, that's a business case right there.
Some shit like that for the culture would be huge, you know?
And that sort of software could cross state lines and eventually be a unifying factor for when it does bubble up into becoming a federal industry, right? Because there's already infrastructure there. That's brilliant. That's how we need to think.
Yeah.
And you're not left out of the industry then.
Exactly. You know what I mean? You become a focal point. Because then, you know, you make the API something that is agreeable across all platforms, Mac, Windows, so it doesn't matter what you're running on. Make it as, you know, as labor intensive, as little labor intensive as you can on any kind of PC. You got yourself a stew brewing, as they like to say. So that would be what I would think we should, like you said, concentrate on, just a peripheral outside of the normal scope. Because you're right, I think that the focus when it comes to the marijuana industry, because of how much money it makes, because of what you hear about what states like Colorado are doing.
$4 billion in California last year.
Right. So you hear that and you immediately think commerce. I got to get my hands on some of that money. When in actuality, what are the producers spending their money on? What do they need to make their job easier? What do they need to streamline certain processes that they deal with every day that are convoluted? You know, so if we can get to one, I feel you, man. I feel you. It's
because that would be a dominant player. Whoever created those sort of companies would be adopted, but because it's a need, it's a necessity need for these companies. Yeah. So there's a lot of room there. I don't think we've lost this game at all. It just takes us to wake up and see where we can have our impact and unify in so doing. And then I have a lot of optimism in our people. I have a lot of, even in America today, I have optimism because this is unsustainable. Yeah. And there will be leaders who rise, like, you know, who maybe you'll sparkle, maybe I'll sparkle, maybe Generation Z.
Yeah. I mean, we're already seeing it. We got people like AOC. She's very in your face, and she comes from the later generation that I'm from, the millennial. Yeah. And, you know, these are going to be the people that, I mean, we could see AOC as president in the next 10 years.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I hope I like her.
Oh man, yeah. She's incredible. But we're getting close to the end. Do you have any closing statements that you want to maybe make, or anything that you want to talk about?
Yeah, I do, and it pertains to industry, and it pertains to what you're doing, and your voice is vital, and I really appreciate you having the courage to make a foray out here and put your voice in the media, an educated opinion, an enlightening one, and I thank you for inviting me on here. But for your audience, I'd like them to get out there in the business world and compete, because that's where your political voice is. It all comes from lobbying dollars. It's not from your votes. It's from your lobbying dollars. And so if you want to change the situation on the ground, you must confront the power structure in real time. You have to change the custom in real time. And that means if a cop confronts you, you confront him back with the law.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
So and then your rights are not proven on the street. Your rights are proven in